Hello, I'm Levi Cornelson, and this is episode 3 of the D&D Playstyle. This is a series on the basic playstyle that the text of D&D prompts, which players often create variations on, and how the text prompts that. If you haven't seen the first two videos, I'm sorry to say that you probably won't be able to get much sense out of this one, but I will link them in the description for you so that you can start at the beginning. In this video specifically, I'll be talking about 3-ring binders. So catching up from those first two videos, D&D does have a particular shape to the text. It supplies a body of clear procedures, but the clear direct procedures that it supplies are mostly mechanical, numbers and dice. They don't encompass all the conversational elements of play and all of the procedural parts that take place there. That stuff is handled as advice and then set firmly on the shoulders of the DM. But further principles and procedures for the totality of play, both mechanical and conversational, for D&D exist. They're just not in the main text. They're in side texts, and they're in the culture around D&D, and DMs are assumed to be collecting those into a personal canon of how to best run the game. The DM's personal canon, their body of collected practices, supports, and ways of working with the game holistically, where the rules only do this as required. Their body of practice supersedes the rules, and it should, because it's more foundational and fundamental than the rules, which are really only mechanics. So let's look at that for a second. There we have the gameplay and rules, and the DM's canon supporting that. Personally, I like to call the DM's collection of methods, procedures, and practices their 3-ring binder. Every DM stuffs their own 3-ring binder, whether real, imaginary, or both, with the material that the game rests on. So, where do DMs get the stuff in the binders? Some common places found throughout the history of the game include the original tradition of DMs showing and teaching each other how to run the game directly at the table, the oral tradition. This tradition has sometimes been mythologized out of scale, but it certainly exists. They get it from structural components of adventures, where following along with the adventure is the structure of the play. They get it communicated to them officially in side texts, books like the original campaign sourcebook and Catacomb Guide, Dragon Magazine, and other DM advice and resource materials that come from the publisher. They get it shared in online communities, starting back in the day of bulletin board systems and moving all the way up to Discords. And they get it from loose articles, often posted in blogs, zines, and via other alternative publishing, where I live and probably most of you do too. As well as these common sources, I'd also like to mention the Principia Apocrypha, the result of a bunch of OSR people trying to write out the principles that actually define the mythical old-school tradition, so much as there is a single one. After this was created, a lot of the independently published OSR games and retro clones got a lot less vague about conversational procedures and started packing in principles and structure around that. Still not extraordinarily strong procedures, but stronger than they were before. Finally, we have the modern rise of what are effectively DMing influencers. Some of them might find influencer an objectionable word. There's Sly Flourish, Lazy DM, Keith Aman of The Monsters Know What They're Doing, and many others. So, D&D as a cultural event absolutely does include all of the procedures and practices that support gameplay on every level, and has more of those procedures and practices than any other game. Even though D&D as a text doesn't quite do the job, the stuff does exist. So, taking that perspective, here's what the complete game looks like. There's the game as supplied by the text, filled out and reinforced by the game as supplied by the DM, who sourced a lot of what they're supplying from all sorts of other places and stuck it in their binder. But relying on the cultural event of the game to carry the text is also, let's be clear, a hell of a way to engineer a role-playing game, and something almost no other tabletop RPG could do, unless it was a variant of D&D itself. As an aside here, 4th edition did make a serious attempt at moving towards being a full body procedures. It did that partly by pushing to trim the gameplay more neatly into the game as supplied. And a lot of people absolutely despised it for doing that. See the complaints about its board gaming and video gaming now. It's possible that that reaction against it poisoned the well against D&D supplying those procedures in the text for quite a while to come. Okay, so we now have most of the pieces for how D&D's texts and its culture forward a playstyle. In the next video in this series, I'm going to talk a bit more about the gravity of rules, and then in part 5, I'll switch over to describing the actual default playstyle itself, the thing that all of this is groundwork for. I'll see you there.